to Hangover Comedy. It is Sunday freaking morning. So it is true, I am a lesbian empty nester. Before that, I was a lesbian soccer mom. And before that, say it with me, I was happy. Share with you kind of the story of how I did become a mom. It all started out, I was staring down at two very bright blue lines of a positive pregnancy test. My wonderful partner Susan of 8 years at the time and I were over the moon because after 5 rounds of IVF, we decided this was the last try. And just a couple of weeks earlier, the doctor had deposited 3 embryos, okay? Now he did pull me aside and he said, one of those embryos was the very best embryo I ever made. You want to talk about an expensive egg, okay? That is some Erewhon shit. I did that. And the other 2 were, as the young people say, mid. So we went in for an ultrasound to confirm what was going on, and it was at that point I found out I was very, 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 very pregnant. I was pregnant with this entire front row. Now, you may ask yourself, how could that be? They only transferred 3 embryos. Well, every single one of those embryos implanted and 2 split. So, I was essentially pregnant with a basketball team. Being pregnant with a basketball team is never great, unless you're a possum. You know all 5 of those kids are not gonna go pro. One of them could very well end up like Dennis Rodman. And so much dribbling, so much. But this particular diagnosis was very devastating to my partner Susan and I, because just 1 year earlier, we had lost twins. Just to be clear, we didn't leave them in a McDonald's ball pit or anything. They were born just shy of 24 weeks. They weighed less than a pound, and they died in our arms. And we both grieved very, very deeply for this loss, but it hit Susan particularly hard because everybody was very effusive with their sympathy with me because I was the one who carried the twins. And she was just supposed to be strong and support, you know. But the thing is, she was already carrying the twins in her heart, and she was their mom too. So, it was particularly devastating. But what had happened was, I was diagnosed with a condition called incompetent cervix. There's a lot of female trouble talk here very early in the morning. But now, incompetent cervix is how you know it is the men who write the medical journal. Why not freewheeling cervix? Je ne sais quoi cervix. I give you incompetent cervix versus erectile dysfunction. Erectile dysfunction just sounds like if you smack the side of it and turn it off and on a couple of times, it might start working again. I demand a rebrand. Henceforth, it shall be known as incompetent dick. So, at any rate, I live in the great state of California, and I had access to the very best health care, reproductive health care, unlike many of our sisters around the country today. And Susan and I had to have some of the most difficult conversations we've ever had to have. So finally, she took me by the hand, we looked each other in the eyes, and we knew what we had to do. We had to reduce down to 2 embryos, or face the likelihood of losing all 5. So we decided to go with a procedure called a selective reduction. And a selective reduction is just a very precise abortion. They do it with an 8-inch amnio needle, and without the benefit of any of that silly anesthesia or anything. But you might be asking yourself, like, how does the doctor pick? You know, it all comes down to positioning. You want to talk about waking up on the wrong side of my uterus? It's gonna get worse. Aha. Anyway. You know, I just picture my twin boys, Kenji and Tadashi, in the corner going, not it, you know. Now, because of the timing, they did this procedure on October the 31st. And, you know, they put me on this bed, and it raised and lowered. On Halloween, I was the Dyke of Frankenstein. So when they finally wheeled me into the OR, there was really just like two things I was concentrating on. One is I was staring very intently at the ceiling so I wouldn't cry and bum out the medical staff. And the second thing was, as a Buddhist, I was furiously praying in my head. And I was saying, I am so sorry I am not the right mom for you. I am so sorry this is not the right time for you. But I know there's going to be someplace else with someone who loves and wants you as desperately as we do. And it was just about that time when a particularly callow nurse stuck her big fat head right next to mine. She was adjusting the ultrasound monitor. And she looked at me and she said, "Do you want to watch?" Like, I don't want to be here right now. I don't want to watch. It was at that point I kind of lost it, and like just hot tears were just flowing down the sides of my face. Thankfully, there was a lead nurse who had come to know me. And she grabbed that woman by the collar and yanked her out of my eye line. And she held my hand for the rest of the procedure, just like Susan had earlier. Eventually, the doctor looked up and very solemnly announced, "It is done." Now, the truth is it wasn't quite done just yet, you know. I still had to have my cervix double stitched. I had 7 months of complete bed rest. My partner Susan had 7 months of waiting on me hand and foot and doing all of the chores. She was Cinderella of Sherman Oaks. And I had 4 months in the actual hospital. And Susan and I ended up with over $1 million in medical bills. It was a lot. You know, but the thing of it is, like, not for 1 millisecond of one day have I ever regretted our decision, you know? I mean, like, the only thing that possibly could have been worse is if I would have been forced to try and carry 5 babies to term, and maybe most of them would have died. Now, the truth of the matter is, if those 5 babies had made it, I probably would have left 1 or 2 in a hot car. I'm not Stacy, not so good at the math, what can I say? But I am proud of my family, okay? My 2 sons in the last 4 weeks both graduated from college. One of them graduated cum laude, which means with honors, and the other one graduated al dente, which means by the skin of his teeth. We're not perfect, but they are the treasures of my heart. But it did leave me with one intrusive thought. You guys know what an intrusive thought is?
Yeah.
Oh, it's LA. Of course you know what an intrusive thought is! It's just like a thought on a circular track you can't get out of your head. And the thought is, I don't think the doctor left the best 2 in there. my knuckle draggers, you might agree. They're not even gay, for Christ's sake!